Let's cross over to the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. We'll be back with the discussion.
Our historic, interventions based on the monitoring project. This time round, we wanted to ensure that everything that we documented is up to the credibility states, both the international standards and the national standards. So in order to do this, we developed and launched an election strategy. And most importantly is, as a commission, we undertook a mapping out of 36 hotspot counties based on our work and that of our key partners. And we also developed an internal monitoring digital platform. All our monitoring processes were anchored on a digital platform that is called the 2017 KNCHR Election Monitoring System, that is the EMS. And more specifically, our eyes on the ground have been our monitors and staff. We recruited and trained and deployed 259 monitors across the country. And throughout the electioneering process, we have had presence in 43 counties. Next. Specifically is that we developed tools that we embedded in our system, and the system had the ability to collect and synthesize all the data that was collected by the field monitors based on our pre-selected parameters on what, as a Human Rights Commission, we placed a keen focus on. And the data that this monitoring system was able to capture, forms of images, audio, videos, and documents that we received from our field monitors in real time. And the same was subjected through very vigorous verification and in-depth analysis before it was finally documented in the report we are about to launch. We also employed other strategies for ensuring that we get as much information from members of the public as possible. We rolled out our toll-free line and our SMS platform, same as our other social media platforms, our Facebook, our Twitter account, and we also receive a lot of complaints through our website and our unofficial election mail. So in a nutshell, the Mirage at Dusk. This is the report that we are about to launch today. It is a culmination of our findings from last year, and it has 6 main chapters. The first chapter talks about the contextual background as a country, where we have come from in preparation for the 2017 general elections, and our own objectives and methodology that as a commission we employed. And of course, the second chapter lays down the standards that we used as a commission to base our compliance and our monitoring exercise on, and we relied on the national, regional, and international human rights instruments. And especially, we all remember last year when there was a clamor for electoral reforms. We had the negotiated laws that were passed in October 2016, and we presented an analysis of what these amendments and the impact that they've had on the election, the 2017 general election, and more specifically also on the some of the jurisprudence on the landmark cases that touch on election. Then chapter 3 is where we have documented our findings on the political party primaries and campaigns. And chapter 4 is specifically dedicated to the findings of the general election polling day, that's the 8th of August 2017. And we are all aware after the election what transpired. Chapter 5 dedicates itself to the findings as a commission on what we were able to document, what we are calling the post-election findings. And of course, the last chapter, this is where we just give you a brief about what our key strategic interventions as a commissions have been, and our key recommendations to 16 actors that we deem are very critical in election management process. So in a nutshell, I'll give you a brief overview of some of our findings based on the various electoral cycles. I'll start with the political campaigns and some of the parameters that as a commission we focused on, and the findings that we were able to establish. At the political campaigns, one of the most prevalent human rights violations that as a commission we documented were cases of electoral violence. And out of the 1,112 political campaign-related events that as a commission we monitored, 86 of them, which culminates to a percentage of 7.7%, were cases of electoral violence. And that is just a graph of the frequency of violent cases recorded per county in the places where the commission had presence. the most prevalent being Bungoma, followed by Kakamega, Kisumu, Migori, and Nairobi City, with the least being Kisii and Garissa. And also just to mention that in the course of our monitoring of the campaigns, we also documented very worrying cases of places that were not perceived to be hotspots, but were recording very high cases of violence. A good example is Machakos, Makueni, counties that you'd not have expected such high rises of electoral violence. Next. Also, in terms, just an analysis of the electoral violence that as a commission we were able to monitor, is that most of this violence occurred during events. And most of them actually we noted that as a commission, these are functions that are outlawed by the election laws, especially campaigns around funerals, campaigns around prayer meetings, and campaigns around fundraising meetings. This is where the highest cases of violence were recorded. And according to the kind of violence, we categorize them into 5 main layers of violence. The report enumerates the violence associated with the national level political environment, where we were able to document cases of supporters of the 2 main presidential candidates clashing in various functions. And also with devolution, we saw a very high contestation at the county level. So we've documented violence that has been associated at the county level, positions for the gubernatorial seats, positions for the MCA, where there was a lot of violence among the aspirants. And then more specifically, and we pose it as a question, the youth have been vulnerable in cases of violence. Most of the instances either being utilized by the political candidates as the perpetrators themselves or the victims in most of the cases. And we are posing the questions, the leaders, voters, or guns for hire? Our youth, that's the question that we are posing as a commission. And specifically violence meted out on political leaders, where we've recorded cases of aspirants who have faced violence because of their quest to vie for the political seats. And lastly, threats and violence directed towards the media. Those are some of just snapshots of some of the electoral violence that we were able to document as a commission. The first picture on the left, that was one political rally, but you can see that the victims, violence does not discriminate. And you can see those are members of 2 political parties in the same political event. You can see the boy being caught in the middle of the violence and having to witness the horrendous violence that was meted against these supporters. On the top right, that's a journalist that was being accosted by some of the county officials in one of the counties in Western Kenya. On the bottom part, those are some of the leaders. This was during a funeral. Those are some of the leaders who were engaging in a scuffle. And you can see the fight that is ongoing. So we have several of these cases that we have documented. Next. Another parameter that as a commission we placed keen focus was the misuse of public resources. And we documented this case mostly with the incumbents, both at the national and at the county level. And it manifested itself in various ways. It included the illegal use of the government official vehicles during campaign, the installation in buildings during campaign, and this is clearly outlawed by the Election Offences Act, and the distribution of material goodies and donations to the electorate in promise for the votes. And specifically, we documented active involvement of public officers, which you'll be able to see some of the cases we've highlighted in our report. In total, during the campaign period, we were able to document 77 cases across the country, both from the national and the county level, where officers were engaging in misuse of public resources. That is just one example. The report has several, but that example is one of the counties in Nyanza. And these are all county vehicles that are being used in various political rallies. You can see the first picture on your left. The vehicle does not have a registration plate, but our monitors were able to trace it to being one of the vehicles that was attached to the county. You can see the second on the right, it's clearly the number plate. If you do a quick search, you can see which county it belongs to. And also bottom line, the bottom picture with the number plate very clear. And this was a trend that we witnessed across the country, mostly with the incumbents. Next. Another parameter that as a commission we documented was cases of incitement. And we documented these cases with very high prevalence, especially in Kisumu County. We were recording the highest cases of incitement, followed by Bomet, Garissa, Kakamega, Meru, and Migori counties. In terms of party-wise, the Jubilee party was found to be the political party with the highest incidences of incitement, followed by the Orange Democratic Movement in the counties where the commission had presence. We also documented under incitement a lot of cases of leaflets circulating during the campaign period, asking members of particular communities to vacate the places if they do not vote for a particular candidate. And that is just an example. We have several others, but those are just some of the leaflets that our monitors were able to document in the various counties where various communities were ordered to vacate if they will not vote for particular candidates. Next. Voter bribery, it was very, very prevalent during the political campaigns, and it manifested itself in various forms, either through aspirants attending fundraising functions, what we call harambes, during the electioneering period, making promises of rewards, such as jobs and reimbursing those who attended political rallies, giving cash handouts, and not just cash handouts, but also distributing clothes, distributing kangas, caps, blankets, water tanks to the electorate who attended their political campaigns. We also documented cases where aspirants undertook household shopping to influence some of the voters. We have cases where some government officials were distributing relief food in the full attire of the campaign regalia, and also cases where aspirants were settling hospital bills and paying school fees for families with the intention of influencing the way they vote. The most common, according to our documentation, the most common counties that recorded voter bribery was Kwale, closely followed by Laikipia, Tana River, Bungoma, and Kericho counties in that order. Next. Those are some of the cases of voter bribery. On the top left, that is one of the governors distributing water tanks, and you can see clearly the posters seeking his vote. On the left, on the right, that is one of the CSs distributing relief food during a campaign rally. And at the bottom right, that is one of the aspirants giving what we call blankets to the elderly persons. We have several of these cases you'll be able to see in the report that we'll launch next. As a commission, we placed a very keen focus on what we call special interest groups. And these are groups that are vulnerable, and especially during the political context, they were more vulnerable. You know, cases of violence being meted against persons with disabilities, the youth, the women aspirants face a lot of sexual and gender-based violence. The elderly were very vulnerable, especially because they were really used by the aspirants during voter bribery. And of course, a very worrying trend of children being misused in political campaigns. And as a commission, we issued an advisory because of the high rise of misuse of children during political campaigns, which is against all international standards of their best interest. Those are some of the pictures where children have been used in political campaigns. You can clearly see that these are children that are supposed to be in school, but they are attending political rallies. We all know how political rallies, in terms of violence, there are cases where children have been caught, you know, in the mayhem, and when scuffles occur during political rallies, children have been caught, and we've documented several cases where children have actually been admitted to hospital. That is an example that we got from West Pokot during one of the political rallies of one of the presidential aspirants. And these are children who inhaled tear gas and were forced to be admitted to hospital. It's a very, very sad trend. In terms of persons with disability, and especially their accessibility and facilitation to be able to exercise their vote, these are samples of polling stations. And you can see the entrances of these polling stations are very high, steep staircases. Now the question is, if I had a wheelchair, will I be able to access those polling stations? Next. On the polling day findings, this is one of the cycles that as a commission we placed keen focus on. And just to give you a brief overview of what our strategy for the 8 polls was, is that most importantly, we obtained accreditation for all our monitors and staff. And as a result of our deployment, we were able to monitor a total of 1,218 polling centers in 436 wards in 191 constituencies located in 43 counties. And that is a culmination of our monitoring exercise and our scope across the country. We restructured our electron nerve center, what we call the KNCHR hub, to be able to receive information 24/7 from members of the public, to be able to facilitate the actualization of appropriate and timely interventions based on our mandate as a commission. Then, for the first time in the history of Kenya, is that prisoners were allowed to vote. And as a commission, we placed keen focus and monitored 27 main prisons with the highest number of inmates registered as voters, and our findings have also been documented in this report. The key parameters that as a commission we placed keen focus on the polling day were issues around security and how both the security of the voters and the security of the ballot papers were secured during the August poll. The issues around electoral environment, where we looked at what the law says and how the actual practice of the polling centers were, issues of campaigns, any interferences for voters to cast their ballots, bribery and inducement on the polling day itself, restive crowds and long queues. And of course, as a commission, we also monitored the polling, the counting, and the transmission of results. So in a nutshell, an overview of some of our findings is that in terms of security, is that as a commission, we commend the National Police Service and the IBC for putting adequate preparation and organization towards ensuring the security of every Mwananchi to cast their vote. And that has been highlighted in the cases that we've documented, where we saw the physical presence of police officers in all the polling centers. And this presence, it ensured that the voters had confidence and felt secure to be able to cast their ballot on the voting day. And there were few selected cases of insecurity, but the police, we were actually able to document that the police promptly addressed the same. Next. In terms of the electoral environment and what our laws state with regards to how the polling centers should be, we were able to observe and document cases of irregularities which had a negative impact on the prevailing electoral environment. Most importantly is that we note that contrary to the law is that there were campaign materials in most of the polling centers where we documented in forms of posters that were still in the station even on the 8th of August. We also documented cases of individual candidates and supporters conspicuously campaigning.
Right, very important, this report that is being released by the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. We'll be trying to break down that report. Sharon Baranga is at the press conference. We'll be speaking to her shortly to tell us what else was said when we are out of that press conference.